Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. Tonight's topic is hot markets to invest. So tonight we're going to spend the next 30 minutes together. This is the first episode. We're going to be running different series every week, only for members, okay? So I'm going to show you all the secrets. So we're going to cover one secret at a time per week. And I want to make sure that you're accountable. So we're going to have homework for you so that I want to become your accountability partner, okay? So the first objective tonight is to understand hot markets to invest. So I'm going to tell you what you need to look at, what are the things that you should know, and the things that are very relevant when you invest in an area, and the things that you should be careful about, okay? So having said that, let's get started. So I'm gonna open up ChicagoDealVault right now. So the first thing that we need to do is area selection, right? So when you are going to invest in real estate, you need to know where you're gonna invest. And as a rule of thumb, something that my wife and myself have done in the past that has worked very well is to draw a circle in a 10-mile radius from where you live. So this is it. So let me show you. So for instance, we live near O'Hare. So I'm gonna put just an address. Okay, and then I'm gonna do a 10-mile radius. So I'm going to this website. Make sure you write these down. It's called mapdevelopers.com. This is gonna allow you to draw a circle. Okay, so then you just click on new circle, boom. So here, so for instance, in the middle, this is the location, right? So this is the address. This is where you're gonna enter your address. And then we're gonna have a 10-mile radius. Why a 10-mile radius? Because if you go beyond the 10-mile radius, your rehabs, your buy and holds, your wholesales are gonna be a little bit more difficult to manage. So the minute you go out of this mileage, then you need to start finding different contractors. It's just the commute is not as feasible. You're gonna be driving over an hour if you go beyond a 10-mile radius. So this is what we recommend. So draw a map. So once you draw a map, then you need to understand each of these areas that are around where you live. Okay, so the way to do that is we're gonna go to ChicagoDealVault, and then we're gonna look up every single area, right? Because successful investors, they don't do drive for dollars, okay? Because that is just a waste of time. They know every single area like the back of their hand. So since I want to make sure that we join the ranks of successful people in real estate, and that is the 2 to 5% of people who get in real estate become successful. The rest, 95, doesn't mean that they fail, but they just don't make it to the level they could, okay? So we need to focus on making sure that you understand hot markets in your surrounding neighborhoods, okay? So having said that, once that you have identified your areas on the map, then we're gonna go back to ChicagoDealVault, and then I'm gonna show you in ChicagoDealVault, we are going to click on area reports right here, area reports. So I'm gonna show you the things that you need to understand and that you need to look for when looking at an area. So for instance, I'm gonna pick an area, one of my favorites, it's Bolingbrook, and I'm gonna tell you why in the area. But also I'm gonna pull up an area that is challenging and an area that is upcoming, right? So just so you see what we need to look for. I'm gonna look for an area, Riverdale. Okay, so Riverdale, this is one of the most challenging areas. So I would say this is like a war zone. So these are areas that you should not invest because you're gonna lose money. You're gonna have a hard time, and most importantly, your safety is at risk, okay? So let's just pull up this report. So these are the things that I want you to understand. So when you pull up the report, we're gonna scroll down. Let me maximize this so that you can see what we're going to be looking at. Okay, so make this bigger. Okay, perfect. So first of all, we're going to give you the area on the map so that you understand the location of it. And then we're going to highlight some factors observed. This is very important because these factors will affect the property value tremendously, okay? So these are the negative factors that are in many areas, right, that you need to look out for. If they're near highways, train tracks, water reclamation, these are factors that will impact your property appreciation and property value negatively. So you need to be aware of these. Now, the next section, this is going to be very crucial. The one that you need to look at is livability. This one right here on the left-hand corner, this is 48. So what is this? What does this mean? The max score is 100. The lowest, obviously, is 0. So how do they compute the livability? So they're going to take into account the amenities, cost of living, crime, education, employment, housing, and weather. Okay, so weather, we don't care, right? Because it's going to be pretty much the same throughout Illinois. So look at these areas. So housing, F. Employment, F. So what does that mean? That there are not many employers. Education, what does that mean, F? So F means that it's not good, right? A being that it's awesome. So education, that means that schools are horrible, right? So they're not good. Crime, that means that crime is very high in this area. Cost of living, when you see an A, that means that the prices of the houses are very cheap. That is why it's A, right? It's very affordable. Amenities, you know, that has to do with the infrastructure of the neighborhood. So like hospitals, overall parks, things that people look for in an area to live or to invest. So this is very low. Anything below 50 is really, really bad. So look at this, crime. So let me show you what this means. There's a red line right here. So that is the average. So anything above the average is bad, right? So obviously everything, the crime is pretty high. And here we show you the heat map. So you're gonna see some pockets like in the middle of Riverdale. When you see red, that means that it's pretty dangerous. Orange, yellow, it's not the best. Schools, they're not good at all. So we have an F. So now you come down to household income. So look at this. So for this zip code, it's 32,000, whereas the average is 57,000. So the minute you look into areas where the household income is less than the average, less than 57, it's not great. Why? Why is this important to know? Because the lower the median household, the more difficult it's going to be for you to sell the property. People just don't earn enough to pay high rents or to pay high property values. So that's an indicator that it's going to impact your property value. Then look at this one. This is one of the most important indicators, the population growth. Look at this, negative 13%. So what does this mean? This means that people are moving away from this area. So when people move away, guess what happens? Property values go down, rents go down, vacancy rates go up. Okay, so this is not an area where you want to invest. And then we have some demographics right here. Industry, this is going to talk about the employment breakdowns. So you're going to see, like, for instance, retail right here, it's 8%. Transportation, warehouses, 9%. But again, employment is F. So there are not enough source of employment in this area. That is why at the very top, employment is rated as F. Now, housing occupancy. Here you need to look at 3 indicators. Okay, number 1 is owner occupancy. So it's very low, 36% right here. 36%, okay? So that means that there are not too many owners in this area. Whereas renters, 43%. So there's a lot of people who are renting in this area. Therefore, there's going to be a high turnover for renters. If you happen to do a buy and hold in this area, you're going to be going through so many tenants in this area. Now, vacancy, look at this. So these are the three indicators that you need to look at. 20%. So this is way too much. 20%. So you're guaranteed you're going to have at least 2 to 3 months for sure of vacancy in a year. Can you imagine? So you need to look for vacancy rates below 10%. So 20% is just way too high. Okay. So down below, we're going to rate the area, A being the best, D is being the most challenging area. So obviously we're going to rate this as a D area. And then we're going to give you the conclusion right here. So now, having said that, I'm going to pull up a much better area. Like for instance, Hinsdale, okay? Hinsdale is a very desirable area, okay? So now let's just compare them side by side. So here you have the geographic location on the map. Some factors observed as well. We have some highways and train tracks to be careful of, but let's just look at the livability. Look at this, 90, whereas Riverdale, it's 48, so it's a big difference. Okay, now amenities, it's A, right? So you have parks, you have schools, you have shops, you have stores, so amenities is very high. But look at this, cost of living, F. So this tells you that housing is very expensive in Hinsdale, right? Whereas Riverdale is A. Why? Because it's so cheap. And then you move on to the crime. So A+, that means that there's very little crime. Education, that means that schools from elementary all the way to middle school, high school are going to be awesome. Employment, great source of employment, okay, in Hinsdale. And then housing, so availability of housing, it's great. Whereas Riverdale, look at this. You see what I mean? So you need to pay attention to the livability. That's going to give you just a great understanding of what you're looking into. If anything, just look at the livability. If it's anything over 70%, it's going to be good. Anything below 50%, don't even look at it. Okay, and then obviously if we scroll down, you're going to see the details. Look at the crime, it's almost zero. Schools are going to be awesome in Hinsdale. And then look at the household income for Hinsdale. Way above the average. It can double. Here, the mean. So median, what median is there's a difference between median and mean. Mean means the average, okay? So the average is 247. And then median, what it does is that it removes the outliers. So the very low or the very high are removed. So this is what we typically need to focus on the median. So anyway, the median is like 3 times the average. So this is going to impact, obviously, the property values, rents, because then people can afford to pay higher prices in this neighborhood. Population, it's I would say anything plus minus 0, it's stable. So there's no growth, but there's no also loss of population. So this is, I would say, stable, right? It doesn't change as much. And then the industry, this is the breakdown of the employers. So here, look at this. 26% is professional, scientific, management, administrative. So there's a lot of employment, right? Professional employers in this area. So this is good. And also this one, 21%. So you have educational services, healthcare, social assistance. So employment is good, it's very good. That is why it's rated as A+. Housing occupancy. Now remember, we need to look at 3 factors. Owner occupancy, 81%, right? It is very high. So there's a lot of private ownership. Renters, very low. Therefore, vacancy is below 10%. So these are great indicators. So you want, the higher the owner occupancy, the better, because there's going to be pride of ownership. So what that means is that people are going to take care of the property, right? Because they are the owners. Whereas in rental areas like Riverdale, it's very low. It's very low. Owner occupancy, I think, was in the 50s, in the 40s, 36%, so low, right? Whereas Hinsdale, it's in the 80%. So you want to focus on areas that have a high owner occupancy, okay, like over 70%. And obviously by default, your vacancy is going to be less than 10%. And then we're going to rate the area. So Hinsdale obviously is going to be an A area, so it's very desirable. And then here we're going to give you the conclusion. So now let's look at some more details. So far we covered half of the area. This is what you need to know in a nutshell, right? Whether it's an A area, B area, C area, or D area. But when we're looking at an area, the first thing that I want to know is the livability. So the first thing that I'm going to look at is how desirable is this area? This is the key indicator, livability. Okay, look at this, look at the difference, right? So you don't want to be looking at things below 50%. So here, this is the best indicator, right? Before you start going deeper, right? So don't waste your time. Look at the livability factor. This is going to tell you a summary of everything, okay? Whether you're going to do a buy and hold, fix and flip, or a wholesale, this is going to impact directly your bottom line, okay? So anything above 75. Now let's look at the second portion of the report. It is crucial for you to understand, okay? So it is the sales market analysis in the last 12 months, okay? So this sales market analysis, this is the data that we gather from the MLS. So we split this into three sections. So we have the 2 to 4, the attached or detached. So these are pretty much numbers that you need to understand very well before you enter the market. So once you have a checkbox for the livability, then you're going to start to look into the numbers, okay? And you need to understand what this means. So the first thing that I like to look at, that is why we highlighted this in a different color, is a sweet spot to buy a property, right? So sweet spot to buy this is on the right-hand column, is a single family home, is $965,000, right? So it's way too expensive, right? And the sweet spot to sell is over 1 million. So this is an area that for investors doesn't make sense, right? But I just want you to understand what you need to look at. We're going to be looking at B areas, bread and butter. So I'm just giving you the extremes, a very nice neighborhood area and a very bad area, so that you understand what numbers you need to look at. But we're going to be looking at, as an investor, you need to focus on BC areas, right? Those are the bread and butter, where the sweet spot to buy a property is about between 100 to 250, up to 300. That's the sweet spot. That's the bread and butter. That's what most families can afford, okay? So we're not going to be looking at the outliers, such as like Hinsdale, right? So the sweet spot to buy is way too much. So now, having said that, let's pick a bread and butter area. So we're going to pick, for instance, one that I really like is Bolingbrook. It's an upcoming area. And I'm going to show you how and why I determine these are great areas to invest, and how I'm able to know that in just a second. So let's just pull Bolingbrook. So let's just scroll down. And then in Bolingbrook, so the first thing that we need to look at is the geographic location, right? So really quick on the map, right? So we see highways. I don't see any train tracks, but we're going to show you right here. So highways. So livability, look at this, 78. So friends, I told you anything above 70, 75 is going to be great, okay? Anything below that is going to be questionable. So let's just look at these amenities, right? So hospital, parks, schools, shops, it's great in Bolingbrook. Cost of living, D. So that means that it is sort of expensive. It is not too expensive, otherwise it will be an F, but it's still affordable. And then crime, that means that it's a safe neighborhood. Then you have education, so you have great schools. Employment, C, that means that there are not that many employers in Bolingbrook, okay? Housing, so there's enough housing available in Bolingbrook, but not as much as in other areas. But overall, in a nutshell, 78. So this is a great area, and I'm going to show you why. So if we just scroll down and see the crime, as you can see, it's below the average. So that is great. The heat map, it's clean, right? It's green. And then the schools are great here. And then the household income, 78,000. So it's above the average. So that's what matters, right, friends? You've got to focus on areas where at least the household income is going to be the average, okay? Because this is going to impact directly affordability, right? For the people that you want to target as your audience. The buyers that you want to target are going to be able to pay what you're asking for, right? So make sure that at least is the average of 57. So Bolingbrook is 78. That's awesome. Population growth, look at these, friends, 31%. So Bolingbrook is an upcoming area. So you're able to tell by the population growth. You see that? So compare that to Riverdale, right? If we just look at Riverdale population growth, it goes the other way, negative, right? So people are moving away. We want to stay away from these areas. Bolingbrook, it's growing 31%. So people are moving into this area. Why? Because property prices are still very reasonable. Not only that, but rents are high. So for investors, this is one of the best places to invest. Why? Because prices are affordable and rents are very high. So therefore, the positive cash flow in Bolingbrook is going to be a lot higher. So let's just go down. The industry, this is the breakdown of the employment. So for instance, 23% right here, it's education services, healthcare, social assistance. So here, let's continue to go down. Housing occupancy, remember, look at three factors. Owner occupancy, 76%. Anything above 70% is great. So that is like the rule of thumb, friends. Anything above 70% for livability or owner occupancy, it's good, right? Thumbs up. Renter occupancy, 16%, so it's low. Vacancy, again, rule of thumb, anything below 10%, it's a great area. So this is 6%, so thumbs up right here. And then, so this is a B area. So friends, as investors, you want to focus on B and C areas. That's it. A areas, numbers are not going to make sense. Why? Because the prices are going to be off the roof. The numbers are not going to work. Risk is very high, especially on a fix and flip, right? And then the rents are not going to cover your mortgage payments. So A areas are not for investors, okay? D areas, your safety is at risk. So I highly suggest to stay in BC areas, okay? Top performers such as Andrew, Rahul, Frank Montrose, they focus on BC areas, okay? They don't invest in D areas, they don't invest in A areas, okay? They might buy their own home in an A area, right? But they won't invest in A areas to do a fix and flip or a buy and hold because numbers won't work. Risk is too high. So here we're going to give you the approach that we recommend, a cash flow approach for Bolingbrook. Why? Okay, let's just go into this detail, right? So once I told you this is a B area, let's understand some basic concepts. Okay, so we want to focus as investors in primarily single-family homes, okay? We try to stay away from attached. That means condo, duplexes. Why? Because when you get into condos, duplexes, first of all, appreciation rate is a lot lower than single family homes. That means on a yearly basis, the value of your property is going to appreciate at a lower pace than single family homes. Not only that, friends, but you need to work and deal with the association, and they can change the rules anytime.
Can't hear you.
I think it froze.
Can't hear you.
Nope, we can't hear either.
Can't hear you. He can't hear us either. Hello? You go, baby.
Picture is back, but still no sound. You go.
No.
You go. We can't hear you. No, we can't hear you at all.
Can't hear you, but hear everybody
Can you
else.
hear me okay now? Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, we got you.
Yes.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Joe, for calling. Okay, having said that, since you can hear me and you can see my screen, let's continue. I'm gonna mute all of you, okay, right now. So, mute all of you. Okay, friends, so I was telling you about attached condos. Stay away from them. They can change the bylaws tomorrow and you're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna need to sell that property. Actually, that happened to us a few years ago where we bought a condo and they changed the bylaws and then we couldn't rent it. So we had to sell the condo. So let's understand the numbers. I suggest you focus on single family homes. Why? Because you're going to be able to, first of all, appreciation is going to be higher. You're going to be able to refinance quicker. And then you're going to be able to, if you do a buy and hold, guess what? The tenant pays for all the utilities. So let's just make sure that you understand these numbers. So what we like to look at is the sweet spot to buy. Look at this, 220. As I said before, you've got to stay between 100 all the way to maybe 250, okay? That's a sweet spot to buy a single family home on any area. If you start buying anything above 250 or anything lower than 100, it's questionable. You're gonna struggle either with vacancy, property values, or it's a higher risk. So stay between 100 to 250. And then the sweet spot to sell is 227, a single family home in Bolingbrook. Okay, now the second thing that you need to look at is how long they stay in the market. So that is the line right up above. So when you buy a single family home in Bolingbrook, they're gonna stay in the market for over 2 months, potentially, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. Also, something that you need to know is whether there are a lot of flips in the area. So there are very few flips. That's the bottom section. Not too many flips in this area, which is good, right? Because otherwise you're gonna have a lot of turnover. I'm going to show you an area that has tons of flips, okay, in just a second. But I want to make sure that you understand the numbers up above. This is getting a little bit more technical, but they're so crucial for you to understand. So here, let's just focus on detached. So these are in the last 12 months, friends. Okay, so this is analysis in the last 12 months. So number of properties sold, 907. Active listings, 119. Okay, fine. So this is where you need things start to get very interesting. Absorption rate. So these are the number of properties sold, in this case, 907 divided by 12 months. So that is 75. So what does this mean? This means how fast properties are selling in a month. So the higher, the better. So that means that 75 single-family homes are being sold on a monthly basis. So obviously, the higher the absorption rate, the better. Okay, so let me just show you Riverdale, right? Riverdale is a D area, very dangerous. So let's just look at the absorption rate for Riverdale. It's not even 1. So that means nothing is moving, nothing is selling, because it's such a bad area. People are not going there. It's the opposite. People are moving away. You see that? So the higher, the better. Now let's look at Hinsdale, right? What's the absorption rate in Hinsdale? It's lower. Why? Only 24 properties. Well, because the properties are too expensive. That is why they're only selling 24 a month. So it's not a market that you want to get into. You want to get into a market, again, friends, the key number, rule of thumb, 70, right? Look at the 70. So if at least 70 homes are being sold on a monthly basis, that's great. So homes are moving. What does that mean? Whether you're going to do a fix and flip or a buy and hold, when you decide to sell, the likelihood of you selling the property is going to be higher. Therefore, the number of days that the property stays in the market is less. Now, let's move on to the next indicator, months of housing supply. So what does that mean? That is the number of active listings divided by the absorption rate. So what does this mean? 1.57. Okay, so what that means is assuming we have 100 properties, 119, right? And we're gonna be selling 75 a month. How much time will that inventory last? Only less than a month and a half. So assuming no new active listings, no new properties enter the market, okay, and we're selling 75 properties a month, there's only inventory for a month and a half. After a month and a half, there are no more properties for sale in Bolingbrook. Does that make sense? Okay, so obviously, let's compare that number. So Hinsdale, so what's the month supply? So 7 months. It's gonna take seven and a half months before you run out of properties to buy. Why is this so high? Again, because the properties are so expensive, right? So there's gonna be plenty of inventory for at least 7 months. What's Riverdale? Riverdale, it's just zero, right? It's just ridiculous. You don't want to get into these properties. So Bolingbrook, it's pretty good. So we have, in month and a half, we run out of properties, assuming no new properties are active or are for sale. So the lower, the better, okay, friends? So that means that properties are moving. So the lower, the better. Make a note. And then look at this. This is the sales price versus the listing price. So what does this mean? So if the property, 98%, so that means if the property was listed for 100,000, it sold for 98,000, okay? So listing versus sold. So there was just a 2% negotiating on the listing price. So let's look at, for instance, Riverdale. Look at this, 80%. So that means the property was listed for 100,000 or maybe 10,000, and it got sold for 8,000. 80%. Let's look at Hinsdale, right? So Hinsdale, it's 94. So that means if the property was listed for 1 million, it sold for 940,000, right? So you have more wiggle, right? So this is important for you. When you make an offer, if you're going to make an offer in Bolingbrook, guess what? You know, the wiggle room is very small. Why? Because this is a bread and butter neighborhood, right? Whereas if you go to like a very dangerous area, you can just give a very low ball offer and it might get accepted, right? Why? Because nobody cares about this area. Nobody wants to get into this area. Hinsdale, it's too expensive. So you still have some wiggle room there, but a bread and butter area, no, there's not much room. Why? Because there's going to be more movement, right? There are going to be more investors trying to get into this area. Why? Because it's an upcoming area. Population growth is high. The sweet spot to buy a single family home, it's still great. So that is why the wiggle room is less. Now here, these are less important. Median least price under contract. So it's 168. So that's what, you know, most of the people get them on the contract for 168. The lowest lease price, 94. That must be like a gov rehab, the highest. So these are the outliers. So we don't want to look at the outliers, right? We want to focus on the median. So remember, friends, median removes the outliers. So it removes the lowest and removes the highest. So this is the median, okay? So pretty much imagine you have 10 properties and then you draw the line in the middle. That's the median. So you get rid of the outliers, the lower and the high outliers. So that's how we come up with the sweet spot to buy, the median sold price. That's what people are willing to pay for a single family home in Bolingbrook. That's how we come up with the sweet spot to buy, okay? And then down below, you have the number of active distressed properties and then the number of sold distressed properties or off market. So let's just look at, for instance, Riverdale, right? Look at this. So the sweet spot to buy a home is less than 12,000. The sweet spot to buy is, to sell over 15,000. This is just, it's a horrible area. Now let's look at Hinsdale, right? Yeah, the numbers are huge, right? So expensive. That's a sweet spot to buy and the sweet spot to sell. So there's not much distressed inventory in this area. So this proves the point, friends, that you've got to stay in a B area, BC area. Don't go into A, don't go into D, B and C, bread and butter, okay? So here, this is a good thing, right? When you have a lot of distressed inventory, that's a great thing for investors, right? Not so much for owners, right? Because they're losing their property, but for investors. Why? Because you're gonna be able to find better deals, awesome deals, right? Because these are pretty much distressed owners that have to sell their property or the banks have already foreclosed on them. So this is a good thing, right? The higher, the better, because the likelihood of you finding better deals is higher. Okay, so now let's just scroll down. Below, we do the same thing, the same analysis, but just for the rental market. So that is why Bolingbrook is one of the best areas, because the rents, look at the rents, friends. They are so high. They're so high. We're going to show you the breakdown. 3-bedroom, it's 1,600, right? The rental. So let's just look at Riverdale, for instance, just for sakes, the rents, 900. So they're going to be very low. This is the breakdown of the rents, right? All the rents primarily go between 700 to 1,000. So low. Hinsdale. So the rents in Hinsdale are high, but if you run the numbers, they won't cover the mortgage payment. So the rents, and look at these, the rents here are not even that high in Hinsdale. So they're in the 2,000, 1,000, 2,000, but the numbers are not going to work in Hinsdale, right? Because the property prices are so high, right? So look, median price in the 3,000, but still your mortgage payment is going to be no less than 5, 6, 7,000. So buy and hold won't work. Fix and flip, it's just a huge risk because taxes are going to be high. Your holding expense per month is going to be outrageous. So the risk is extremely high. You can lose tons of money. So stay away from A areas to invest, right? we're going to need to focus on the bread and butter areas. So let me pull up another bread and butter. So Andrew Holmes, he invests in, for instance, Bellwood, right? For him, this is like bread and butter. So why? Let's just look at that. Well, why is this so? That's one of his favorite areas. Let's just analyze why. So we're going to join the ranks of successful people and analyze this area like in no time. So if I scroll down, what do you observe on the map? I see some, no highways, well, some highways, but I see train tracks, okay? Train tracks. So let's see what it says. Yeah, sure, train tracks, some highways. But let's look at the area in a nutshell. 60% livability, okay? So here in Bellwood, this is going to tell me that look at the crime, education, employment. So it's not the best, right? Whereas Bolingbrook, it's much better. So crime could be high. And then let me just tell you something. All areas have pockets, okay? So there are going to be some areas that in Bellwood, like west or east of Bellwood, that are going to be better, right? Like west of Pulaski is going to be better than east of Pulaski. So you need to be aware of those areas or pockets. So, but at least focus on the livability, 61 out of 100. So it's still better, right? So you don't want to go anywhere below 50. So the crime, again, it's slightly above the red line. So it's in the borderline, right, for crime. Here's the heat map. Let's just scroll down. Some schools, right? So if you see the red schools, that means that they're not good, right? In Bellwood. Household income. Look at this. It's below the average, right? The median household income. So it's just a BC area, right? More like C area. Now let's look at the population growth. It's not the best, right? Some people are moving away from Bellwood. What else? So let's go down to the employment. What's happening here? What predominates? 21% is education services, healthcare. So lots of hospitals probably in Bellwood. Now let's go to the housing occupancy. We need to look at 3 factors. Owner occupancy, 66%. That's good. The best, remember, is 70. But it's not quite there. Renter occupancy, 23. That's good. It's not too high. Vacancy, 10%. So remember, I told you, don't go to areas that have a vacancy rate of over 10%. Bellwood is in the border. So what would you say this area is? Is this a B or a C? So it's a C area, right? Why? Because it's in the borderline for crime. Schools are not that great. Vacancy is like 10%. So this is a C area, right? So here you can do flip and cash flow approach. Now let's look at the numbers, right? And compare them. So again, we said we're going to look at just single family homes. Forget about condos, okay? And then we don't look at multi-units, 2 to 4 right now. Why? Because it's more difficult to refinance. They tend to stay longer in the market. So if you want to sell the property and get your cash, it's going to be a lot more difficult. That is why detached is just much better. Even when you rent the 2 to 4, guess what? You end up paying for the water, the garbage. So you end up paying for a lot of the utilities. Whereas the single family homes, the tenant pays for everything. So let's just look at the numbers. So let's look at the absorption rate, right? Remember, what's that? Absorption rate. That is the number of properties sold per month. So we're selling 19 properties per month. Let's look at Bolingbrook. Bolingbrook, how many are we selling in Bolingbrook per month? Look at this, 75 properties sold per month, whereas in Bellwood, 19. So what does that mean? That means that if you invest in Bolingbrook, you're going to be selling your property a lot quicker than in Bellwood. Now, months of housing supply. Remember what we said? The lower the number, the better. What does that mean? That it's going to take 2.5 months for the whole inventory in Bellwood to end, right? Whereas in Bolingbrook, It's just going to take month and a half, right? So that's the lower the better, friends, because that means that properties are moving in that area. There's a lot of movement. So let's go down. What is the difference of listing price versus sold price? 98. So again, it's a busy area. Therefore, there's little wiggle room, right, for you in busy areas. And then let's look at the sweet spot to buy. Sweet spot to buy is 124, buy it below 124 and sell it above 120. So again, friends, you've got to stay between 100 all the way to 250. That's the bread and butter. So that is why Andrew and Chicago RIA like these type of areas, because 100,000, right? So your risk is a lot less, and then the potential profit is higher, right? Because you're putting less money down on rehab, on down payment. How long do they stay in the market? For about 2 months. Now let's look at the number of flips. Look at this. There are a lot more flips in Bellwood than in Bolingbrook, right? In Bolingbrook, there are only 9. So there's more activity for flips in Bellwood. That's something important. Now, how many sold distressed homes? 82 versus, let's look at Bolingbrook, 157. So that means that you're going to be able to find better deals in Bolingbrook. And Bolingbrook is a B area, whereas Bellwood, it's a C area, and you're going to be able to find less awesome deals in Bellwood. It's more competitive, whereas Bellwood, it's not as competitive. Now, let's look at the rents, right? So if we scroll down, the rents in Bellwood are not that great. So for a 3-bedroom, it's $1,335, whereas in Bolingbrook, you're looking in the upper 600, almost 1,700. Bellwood, it's still, $1,300, $1,400 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So that's what you need to understand when you look at an area. You need to understand the numbers like the back of your hand. Okay, remember, sweet spot, just to summarize, right? You need to look at the livability, right? That is the first indicator. Anything below 50, forget it. Like Riverdale, right? What was Riverdale? That was like 40, 48, too low. Bolingbrook, so that Bolingbrook is in the 70s. Anything above 70 is awesome, right? Focus on this livability indicator. Bolingbrook, 60. Stay in B areas. Hinsdale is going to be way too high, right? It's going to be in the 90s for livability. Yeah, 90, but guess what? Too expensive. Look at this. So now let me show you something extremely powerful. Now, friends, that you understand the key indicators, you may wonder, well, okay, now I understand what I need to look at, right? To see if I can invest in an area, right? I understand that I need to draw a 10-mile radius around where I live, right? To have a manageable property for buy and hold or a fix and flip. So now the next step is, well, how do I know what the hot markets are, right? So having gone through the area analysis, let me show you what we've done, guys. We created a spreadsheet right here. So all the areas that we have in ChicagoDealVault. So in here, we have over 200 areas and neighborhoods, okay? We put them all into Excel. Why did we do that? Because Excel is going to allow us to do filtering by key indicators, right? That we care about. So let me show you the power of this. So we're going to sort. I want to sort by livability, right? That's what I told you, the key indicator. So I want to know the areas that have the highest livability indicator. Give them to me. Okay, boom. So we're going to go to the top of the spreadsheet. Look at this. Hinsdale is number 1 with a livability indicator of 90%. So this is the livability indicator. It's 90%. I'm going to highlight this in yellow so you see that. 90%. So all these areas, look at these, 90%, 89, 89. So look at the names of the neighborhoods, I mean the areas. Hinsdale, Winnetka, Western Springs, Glencoe. So these are gonna be very expensive areas. You see that we have them ranked as well. This yellow was not a good idea. So let's leave it as red, Control Z. So 1, so that means these are top areas. If it's a 1, it's a top area. And then look at the area, we grade the area. These are gonna be A areas. Look at these, A. So again, you won't be able to, we don't recommend for you to get into these areas for investing, okay? Why? I'm gonna show you why. If we scroll to the right, we're gonna look at the prices, right, for these. So I'm just gonna scroll to the right. I'm gonna go to the medium, right here. So this is the sweet spot to buy. I'm gonna highlight these. Sweet spot to buy, look at these. Hinsdale, over, you've got 900,000. This is Winnetka, over 1 million. So the numbers are not gonna work, friends. Look at this. It's too expensive, but you can go down the list and the prices start to get lower. So this is what we do, right? So I told you the sweet spot is below 250. So we can just go down the list, and as you can see, the property prices go down. Look at this one. This is 250, right? I'm gonna highlight this in yellow. So this is the Plains. Okay, so the Plains, you can get into the Plains for 250, right? That's great. Now, let's look at the other column. Livability, it's 85 points. That's awesome. Now, let's scroll to the right. So this plane is an A area. Look at this, right? So that's pretty cool. A area, 85. And then let's look at the cost of living. So D, I mean, it's 250. It's still affordable. This is the crime. A plus, that means there's very little crime. Then education, that means that it has great schools, A. Then employment, C. So this Plains doesn't have the best employers. And then housing, so B plus, so there's enough inventory there. Let's just scroll to the right. Population growth, 0.14. So that means that it's a stable area. It's a stable area, this Plains, so no growth. What else? Median income, it's 65,000. Remember, the median in Illinois is 57, so here's above. So that's a great thing in the Plains. What else do we need to look at? So the rents. So this is the rent for a 2-bedroom. It's going to be $1,255. For a 3-bedroom, $1,800. Okay, so friends, my wife and I have invested in this Plains because of this reason, right? We bought a property in this Plains, and we're looking in this Plains because it's just an awesome area. This Plains is near O'Hare, okay, near Rosemont, just to give you heads up. But you can just go down and then continue to find hot markets, right? And that was just an example of, okay, I see a message here. Let me see what the message says from somebody. It says, are we going to meet again? Okay, Rosemary. Okay, that was a personal message. So this is how you can just go down the list and find awesome properties. And then we can do exactly the same thing. Sort. Something that we like to sort by is population growth. So let's just leave the livability and then let's add another filter, right? So we want to sort by population growth. So we want to sort highest to lowest, right? And in fact, I want to, okay, let's just say boom. Okay, so we're gonna go up and then it's gonna give me Western Springs, right? This has the best livability with the highest growth. Okay, let's just look at the growth. In this population growth, 4%. It's still very, very conservative, right? But again, because the livability is very high, it's 90%, right? So let's tweak the search, the filtering. Let's just remove livability. We want to know the upcoming neighborhoods with a huge population growth. Okay? Boom, Huntley. Whoa. So what is the population growth in Huntley? I'm going to highlight these with a different color so all of you see it. Over 300% in Huntley. Look at that. So these are the upcoming areas. These are the areas that people are going into. They're migrating into Huntley. What's the livability of Huntley? 82. That's pretty good, right? What else can we see? Cost of living, C. So that means that it's kind of expensive. Let's just see how expensive it is. Sweet spot to buy, 260 right here. I'm gonna highlight 260. It's not bad, friends. Remember, I told you that you need to stay below 250, so 260 in Huntley. Let's check out the rents. The rents is, for a 3-bedroom in Huntley, is 1,800. That's pretty good, right, friends? Let's look at, what else can we look at? Employment, A. That means that there are great sources of employment, so that's a good thing, right? Okay, so the question is, how are you generating this spreadsheet? Okay, so I'm gonna talk about that at the end of the presentation in just a second. So this is a proprietary spreadsheet that we created, that it's outside DealVault. So this is how you can find hot markets. And then let me just do the opposite, just for sakes, friends, because then you want to know the areas that you don't want to invest. So I'm going to put in population growth. I'm just going to do the opposite. Give me the areas where people are moving away from. Boom. Number 1, Inglewood. What's the population growth in negatively? So the population growth is, okay, minus 31%. You see, so you can pretty much, these are the areas that you need to stay away from. Okay, so you see how easy it is, friends. So how to identify hot markets, bad markets, bread and butter areas. This is how we do it. This is how successful people do it. And again, friends, life is about access. If you have access to the right information, you win. That's how we're able to join the top 2 to 5% of successful people in real estate, having access to the right data. So all of you have access to ChicagoDealVault. So this is just, I wanted to make sure that you know what you need to do, okay, on area selection. Now the question was, how do you have access to this spreadsheet? Okay, so if you are a yearly subscriber to ChicagoDealVault, we're gonna give you a copy of this spreadsheet. If you are on a month-to-month membership, you do not have access to this spreadsheet. Okay, so you do not have access if you're on a monthly subscription, but if you're on a yearly subscription, we give you this spreadsheet, right? So for those of you who would like to upgrade, this is what I have for you. So if you want to upgrade to a yearly subscription, I have a special for you tonight, okay? And the special for you tonight is, so the annual, pretty much you get everything that you have in the monthly, but on top of that, we're gonna give you the bulk skip trace, we're gonna give you the hot markets, right? That's the spreadsheet that I'm talking about. And not only that, but we're gonna give you access to the shadow inventory that we get on a monthly basis of over 1,000 properties. Okay, so and then we can partner with you. So we're gonna give you this for only 1,080. For those of you who wish to upgrade to the yearly, you can just send me an email or a chat so that we can upgrade you to the yearly, so that we can give you this spreadsheet and you know, be able to identify hot markets. So having said that, friends, this concludes the webinar tonight. So for those of you who want to upgrade,